If you've watched Star Wars The Clone Wars, and if you're on this channel, it's a safe bet you have, you surely remember quite a few interesting scenes starring Obi-Wan Kenobi and Satine Kryze. The romantic tension between the two was always palpable, and neither was very shy about the fact that they had feelings for each other, despite Obi-Wan's allegiance to the Jedi Code. Obi-Wan once went so far as to say that, if Satine had asked, he would have left the Jedi Order. That's quite a bold statement. Was it still true during the Clone Wars? How close was Obi-Wan to running off with Satine?
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Obi-Wan and Satine loved each other. Everyone knew it too. Anakin knew it, Ki-Adi-Mundi knew it, Maul somehow knew it, and everyone who saw the two standing next to each other knew it. It was even more of an open secret than Anakin and Padme. Perhaps, more importantly, Obi-Wan and Satine both knew that they shared a mutual love. Neither was in denial about it, despite the degree to which Obi-Wan tended to downplay the relationship. We'll come back to that a bit later. This relationship developed during the Great Clan Wars, one of innumerable Mandalorian civil wars. Taking place sometime after the Mandalorian Civil War proper and the Battle of Naboo, this conflict tore Mandalorian society apart, spreading from Mandalore to Kalevala and other Mandalorian worlds. Satine was the daughter of the Duke of Kalevala, a powerful Mandalorian warlord killed fairly early in the war. The rest of her family was torn apart. Satine's sister, Bo-Katan, joined the Death Watch, but Satine became a pacifist and sided with the new Mandalorians. During the war, newly anointed Duchess Satine was placed under the protection of Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn and his Padawan, Obi-Wan. The three spent months hiding out together, with Satine and Obi-Wan falling in love and getting into all sorts of trouble. And because we know the comments are going to be full of this, that trouble did not, in fact, involve the conception of Korkie Kryze. The math doesn't really add up. Assuming, per the episode The Academy, that Korkie was about Ahsoka's age, he would have been born a few years after the Great Clan Wars likely wrapped up. Regardless, Obi-Wan and Satine were going strong enough that, by the end of their adventures together, Obi-Wan would have left the Jedi Order if she had asked him to. Of course, she never did. But what would it have been like if she had? What if Obi-Wan did leave the Jedi Order for her? We don't need to guess to come up with an answer to this question. In Legends, Obi-Wan actually did briefly leave the Jedi Order during his time as an apprentice, albeit for very different reasons. He also had another love interest, a fellow Padawan named Siri Tachi, who he also considered leaving the Order with. In 44 BBY, before Obi-Wan's adventures with Satine, he and Qui-Gon were sent to the planet Melita/Dan, a mess of a world embroiled in a centuries-long civil war. This conflict, fought between factions called the Melita and the Dan, had been going on for so long that nobody on the planet remembered why it had started in the first place. But the boomers who ran the planet, the Elders, insisted on endlessly killing each other anyway, destroying their families' lives, their civilization, and their very planet in the process. Melita/Dan was gripped by endless famines and plagues due to the industrial demands of the war, and the Jedi were sent in to stop the fighting. On this world, where the adults were all acting like children, some of the children were starting to act like adults. During their mission to Melita/Dan, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan discovered the Young, a collection of young activists committed to ending the Civil War. They aided the Young as the coalition carried out attacks against military bases on both sides. Obi-Wan became increasingly involved with them in their cause over the course of the mission, repeatedly disobeying Qui-Gon's orders so he could help them. This culminated in Obi-Wan actively fighting on the Young's behalf, carrying out an attack that, at length, persuaded the Elders to pursue peace talks with the Young. But the Young refused to negotiate, believing the olive branch to be a diversionary tactic. On orders from Master Yoda, Qui-Gon left Melita/Dan, but Obi-Wan refused to go with him. The young Padawan chose to leave the Order to help the Young win their war, and Qui-Gon left him behind. After 14 days of fighting between the Elders and the Young won out. With Kenobi's help, they attempted to form a new government, but the newfound peace rapidly decayed. Qui-Gon was sent back to Melita/Dan to help his former Padawan stitch things back together. When the mission was accomplished, Obi-Wan decided to return to the Jedi Order. He had left to help his friends and pursue a cause he believed in, but he knew in his heart that his place would always be with the Jedi. He made a similar decision later in his apprenticeship, choosing to abandon his relationship with fellow Padawan Siri Tachi. After being friends for years, he and Tachi realized that they had feelings for each other and began a romantic relationship. However, both were well aware that this conflicted with the Jedi Code and developed misgivings about the relationship because of that. After careful consideration and discussion with their masters, Obi-Wan and Siri choose an amicable breakup, putting their duties as Jedi first. With that expanded universe context in mind, we can reconcile two seemingly contradictory details about Obi-Wan's relationship with Satine. He stated that, if she had asked, he would have left the order for her at the end of their adventures together, but he later implied that this was no longer the case. This was despite the fact that Obi-Wan obviously still loved Satine. With those other stories in mind, however, it's easy to see that, while he openly loved her, Obi-Wan knew his duty to the Jedi came first. This might seem a bit confusing. After all, since the Jedi Code forbade love, Obi-Wan would be breaking it simply by holding on to his feelings for Satine, right? Wrong. Allow us to remind you of a very important line from Attack of the Clones.
Attachment is forbidden. Possession is forbidden. Compassion, which I would define as unconditional love, is central to a Jedi's life. And so you might say that we are encouraged to love.
It was perfectly okay for a Jedi to feel love. In fact, it was perfectly okay for a Jedi to feel anything because you can't control how you feel. That's how emotions work, and the Jedi understood that. Rather, they aimed to overcome their emotions instead of letting their emotions overcome them. They felt whatever they felt, but they trained themselves to let it end there. They would process their emotions and then let them go. Obi-Wan couldn't help loving Satine, and he never tried to repress that love, nor was he required to. After all, Jedi were encouraged to love so long as they maintained clear judgment and avoided attachments. As a Padawan, Obi-Wan might have struggled with that last part, but by the time he was reunited with Satine during the Clone Wars, this was no longer the case. He accepted his love for her and allowed himself to feel it, but he didn't allow his feelings to get in the way of his duty to the Jedi, nor was he at any real risk of doing so. There's a difference between feeling a certain way and acting on it, and while Obi-Wan strayed over the line a little bit in some cases, he was disciplined enough as a Jedi Master to not let things get out of hand. Satine, for her part, understood and probably felt a similar way, choosing her perceived duty to her people over running away with Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi was not at all close to leaving the Jedi Order during the Clone Wars. On the contrary, he was a perfect example of what Jedi were supposed to be like. There was a reason Yoda, Windu, and the others respected him so much. There wasn't anyone else alive who embodied the Old Order's vision of a Jedi more perfectly. This is in part because of, not despite, his feelings for Satine. Loving Satine ultimately made Obi-Wan a better Jedi, and some Jedi would have done well to learn from the way he dealt with that love. So, that's our look at the relationship between Obi-Wan Kenobi and Satine Kryze. But what do you think? Do you agree with our assessment, or are you already preparing to burn effigies of us? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comment section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.